Ambassador Kim Dae-ho sat in his small office on Harmony Point Station, drinking his morning coffee and reading reports from Earth. The coffee was synthetic, but it tasted real enough. Outside his window, he could see the stars spinning slowly as the station rotated. He had been humanity's representative here for 3 years now, and most days were quiet. Too quiet, some might say. The other alien species barely talked to humans. They saw Earth's people as newcomers who had only learned to travel between stars 50 years ago. To them, humans were like children playing in a room full of adults. Dae-ho understood this. The 3 major powers had been traveling space for thousands of years. They had technologies humans could barely understand. They fought wars that lasted centuries, but today felt different. His computer made a soft beep. A priority message was coming in. Dae-ho set down his coffee cup and touched the screen. The hologram that appeared made him freeze. 3 figures stood in the blue light above his desk. One was tall and covered in scales with 4 arms and yellow eyes. This was High Commander Vextar of the Vorthok Empire. Next to him stood a being that looked like it was made of silver metal and light. Prime Architect Kilnara of the Nexari Collective. The 3rd figure was harder to see clearly, as if made of mist and starlight. Eldest Voice Mordain of the Kethmore Ascendancy. These 3 beings represented the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They had not appeared together in the same message for over 200 years. Human Representative, High Commander Vextar spoke first. His voice was deep and rough like grinding stones. We send this message to inform you of events that may affect your species. Dae-ho leaned forward. This was already the longest speech any of them had ever directed at a human. Prime Architect Kilnara spoke next. Her voice sounded like music made of mathematics. Recent conflicts between our civilizations have reached a critical point. We have agreed to meet in neutral space to discuss solutions. A peace summit, Eldest Voice Mordain added. His words seemed to come from everywhere at once, soft but clear. After much consideration, we extend an invitation to humanity to attend as neutral observers. Dae-ho's coffee cup sat forgotten on his desk. A peace summit. The 3 powers had not tried to make peace since before humans had even invented the wheel, and they were inviting humanity to watch. The summit will take place in 30 days, Vextar continued. You may bring a small delegation. Your role will be to witness these proceedings and report to your government. Nothing more. The message ended. The hologram faded away, leaving Dae-ho alone with his thoughts. He immediately called Dr. Park So-min, the station's chief xenologist. She appeared on his screen within minutes, her black hair still messy from sleep. Did you see the message? He asked. I'm watching it right now, she said, her eyes wide. Dae-ho, this is incredible. Do you know what this means? Tell me. These 3 civilizations have been locked in Cold War for 2 centuries. The Vorthok believe only military strength can keep peace. The Nexari think technology and logic can solve everything. The Kethmore want everyone to join their spiritual way of thinking. They hate each other. Dae-ho nodded. Everyone in human space knew this. It was why Earth had been careful to stay neutral with all 3 powers. But something must have happened, So-min continued. Something bad enough to make them want to try peace talks. Within an hour, more information began to arrive through intelligence channels. A border incident 3 weeks ago between Vorthok and Nexari ships. Both sides had fired weapons. No one died, but it had been close. Very close. Captain Lee Hyunwoo arrived at the embassy that afternoon. He was tall and serious, with scars on, his hands from his years in Earth's space navy. He had been assigned as security chief for any diplomatic missions. Sir, he said to Dae-ho, I've been reading reports about this summit. I don't like it. Why not? Because each of these powers has weapons that could destroy entire star systems. If they're desperate enough to try peace talks, it means they're also desperate enough to use those weapons if the talks fail. Dr. Park joined them in Dae-ho's office. She had been working all day, reading everything she could find about the 3 civilizations. I have good news and bad news, she said. The good news is that all 3 powers really do want to avoid a war. Their people are tired of the Cold War. It has cost them so much money and resources. And the bad news? Daeho asked. The bad news is that their leaders don't trust each other at all. They each think their way is the only right way. The Vorthak think the others are weak. The Nexari think the others are stupid. The Kethmor think the others have no souls. Captain Lee crossed his arms. So why did they invite us? We're nobody to them. So-min smiled for the first time that day. That's exactly why they invited us. We're nobody. We don't threaten anyone. We don't have old grudges. We're neutral. But what can we do? Daeho wondered aloud. We're just supposed to watch and report, back to Earth. Maybe, So-min said quietly. That's not all we're supposed to do. Over the next week, they prepared for the summit. Earth's government approved a delegation of 12 people. Daeho would lead it. So-min would study the alien cultures and languages. Captain Lee would handle security. They would also bring a few specialists and junior staff. As they packed their things, Daeho kept thinking about what So-min had said. Maybe watching wasn't all they were supposed to do, but what else could they do? Humans had no great weapons, they had no amazing technology, they had no ancient wisdom. All they had were words. The night before they left for the summit, Daeho stood by his window looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, 3 great civilizations were preparing for what might be their last chance at peace. If the talks failed, the galaxy might see its first real war in centuries, and humanity would be right in the middle of it. He thought about Earth's history. Humans had fought many wars. They had made many mistakes. But they had also learned how to make peace with their enemies. They had learned how to find common ground with people who seemed completely different. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was what they were really supposed to bring to this summit. The next morning, as their ship prepared to leave Harmony Point, Dr. Park handed Daeho a datapad. "What's this?" he asked. "Stories," she said. "Stories from Earth's history, about times when enemies became friends, about times when peace seemed impossible but people found a way." Daeho looked at the list of files. Stories about ancient wars and modern conflicts. Stories about people who chose to talk instead of fight. Stories about hope when everything seemed hopeless. "Do you think they'll want to hear these stories?" he asked. So-min smiled. "I think they need to hear them." As their ship jumped into hyperspace, heading for the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history, Daeho held the datapad close. Maybe humans didn't have great weapons or amazing technology, but they had something else. They had the power to change minds with words. The summit station was the largest artificial structure Daeho had ever seen. It hung in empty space between 3 star systems, built specially for these peace talks. The station was shaped like a giant wheel, with 3 main sections for each, civilization and a neutral center where the meetings would take place. As their small human ship approached the docking bay, Daeho could see hundreds of other ships already there. Massive Vorthak war vessels, sleek Nexari science ships, and the strange crystal formations that the Kethmor used for travel. Each civilization had brought hundreds of delegates, advisors, guards, and staff. The humans had brought 12 people. "Feels a bit like bringing a knife to a gunfight," Captain Lee muttered as they docked. "More like bringing words to a weapons show," Dr. Park corrected him. "But sometimes words are more powerful than weapons." They were met at the airlock by Station Administrator Kree-Lan, a member of one of the smaller neutral species. He was short and gray with large eyes that seemed to see everything. "Welcome, humans," he said in accented English. "Your quarters are in the neutral section. I must warn you, the atmosphere here is very tense." As they walked through the station corridors, Daeho could feel the tension Kree-Lan mentioned. Groups of aliens moved past them without making eye contact. Vorthak soldiers marched in formation. Nexari technicians worked on complex devices. Kethmor mystics floated silently in meditation bubbles. None of them looked at the humans. "We're invisible to them," So-min observed quietly. "Good," Daeho replied. "Let's use that." Their quarters were simple but comfortable. As soon as they settled in, So-min began her work. She had brought every piece of information about the 3 civilizations that humanity had collected over the past 50 years. Now she needed to learn more. I'm going to observe them, she told Daeho. Not their politics or their military plans. I want to understand how they think, how they communicate, what they're afraid of. While Somin studied the aliens, Captain Lee explored the station's security. What he found worried him. Sir, he reported to Daeho that evening, each delegation has brought way too much security equipment. The Vorthak have enough weapons to fight a small war. The Nexari have devices I can't even identify. And the Kethmore have something that makes my instruments go crazy whenever I get near it. You think they're planning to fight here? I think they're planning for the possibility that negotiations might end badly. Very badly. The first official meeting took place the next day. Daeho and his team sat in a small observation section, watching as the three main delegations faced each other across a large circular table. High Commander Vextar spoke first. He was even more impressive in person than in the hologram. His scales were dark green and seemed to shift color in the light. His forearms moved as he talked, emphasizing his points. The Vorthak Empire offers peace, he said in his grinding voice. But peace requires strength. We propose mutual defense agreements. We will protect our neighbors if they acknowledge our military leadership. Prime Architect Kilnara responded immediately. She was beautiful in an alien way, her silver body reflecting the room's lights like a living mirror. Mathematical symbols flowed across her surface as she spoke. The Nexari collective values peace through understanding. Her musical voice filled the room. We propose shared technology exchanges, scientific cooperation, logical solutions to emotional problems. Eldest voice Mordain was the strangest of the three. His form seemed to shift between solid and gas, sometimes appearing as an old man, sometimes as pure light. When he spoke, his words seemed to come from inside everyone's mind. The Kethmore ascendancy seeks harmony through unity, he said. We offer spiritual guidance. All beings can find peace by joining the greater consciousness. We have achieved. Within minutes, the meeting fell apart. You want us to become your slaves, Vextar accused Kilnara. You offer only violence disguised as protection, she replied coldly. Both of you ignore the needs of the soul, Mordain added sadly. The arguments that followed were bitter and old. Daeho could see that these three civilizations had been having the same fight for centuries. Each believed their way was the only correct way. None would consider that the others might have good ideas too. Dr. Park watched everything with intense focus. She made notes on a small device recording not just what was said, but how it was said. She studied body language, tone of voice, and the small gestures that revealed hidden meanings. What do you see? Daeho asked her quietly. Fear, she whispered back. They're all afraid. After the meeting ended in failure, Somin explained what she had observed. Commander Vextar is afraid that his people will be destroyed if they show any weakness. Every decision he makes is based on survival. His species almost went extinct once. They never forgot. What about Kilnara? She's afraid of chaos. The Nexari nearly destroyed themselves with wars fought over emotions and beliefs. They turned to logic and technology to save their civilization. She thinks feelings are dangerous. And Mordain. He's afraid of being alone. The Kethmore developed their group consciousness after a plague killed most of their population. They're terrified of individuals making selfish decisions. Daeho thought about this. So they're all afraid of different things. Yes, but they're also all afraid of the same thing. Which is being forgotten. Being erased from history. Each of them has survived something terrible, and they don't want it to happen again. Over the next few days, the pattern continued. Morning meetings would start with hopeful words, then quickly turn into arguments about the past. The three leaders would make demands that the others could never accept. Then they would return to their separate sections of the station to plan for the next day's failure. But Somin noticed something else. In the evenings, when the official meetings were over, younger members of each delegation would gather in the station's common areas. They would eat meals at nearby tables, stealing glances at each other. Sometimes they would even share small conversations. The younger ones are different, she told Deho. They're tired of the Cold War. They want to explore, to learn, to create. But they're stuck following the decisions of their elders. Captain Lee brought more disturbing news. I've confirmed it, he said. Each delegation has weapons hidden throughout the station. If these talks fail, they're ready to start fighting. Immediately. Here? On the station? Here. With thousands of people aboard. Deho felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Humanity was supposed to be just observers. But if these talks failed, the resulting war would affect everyone, in the galaxy, including Earth. On the fourth night, unable to sleep, he walked through the station's quiet corridors. In the observation deck, he found Dr. Park still working, studying videos of the day's meetings. You should get some rest, he told her. I'm close to something, she said without looking up. There's a pattern in how they communicate. Each species has words that calm them down and words that make them angry. If I can figure out the right combination, you think we can help them make peace? She finally looked at him. I think we're the only ones who can. Why us? We're nobody to them. That's exactly why it has to be us. We don't have centuries of hatred. We don't have old wounds that never healed. We can see things they can't see because they're too close to their own pain. Deho thought about the stories on the data pad she had given him, stories of humans who had found ways to make peace when it seemed impossible. What do you need me to do? Request private meetings with each leader, not as negotiations, just as conversations. Let them tell you their stories. You think they'll agree? I think they're desperate enough to try anything, even talking to humans. The next morning, Administrator Krelon looked surprised when Deho made his request. You want to meet with each leader separately? Just to talk? Just to listen, Deho corrected. Sometimes people need someone to hear their story. Krelon's large eyes studied the human ambassador carefully. You know this is very unusual. Observers don't usually participate. These aren't usual times. After several hours of communication between the delegations, Krelon returned with an answer. They've agreed. 1 hour each. They're curious what a human might say. As Deho prepared for the first meeting, Dr. Park gave him final advice. Don't try to solve their problems, don't take sides. Just listen to their stories and share some of our own. Show them that enemies can become friends. What if it doesn't work? Then at least we tried. And sometimes trying is enough to plant a seed that grows later. Standing outside High Commander Vextar's quarters, Deho took a deep breath. In his hand was the data pad full of human stories. Stories of war and peace. Stories of enemies who became allies. Stories of hope when everything seemed lost. Pressed the door chime and waited. It was time to see if words really were more powerful than weapons. High Commander Vextar's quarters were exactly what Deho expected. The walls were covered with weapons from a dozen worlds. Battle flags hung from the ceiling. Everything was arranged to show strength and victory. The commander himself stood. In the center of the room, all 4 arms crossed over his chest. His yellow eyes studied Deho like a predator examining prey. Human, he said, his voice like grinding metal. You have 1 hour. Speak. Deho did not sit down, even though there was a chair. He sensed that Vextar would see sitting as weakness. I did not come to speak, Commander. I came to listen. But first, may I tell you a story from my world? The alien's eyes narrowed. A story? Yes. About enemies who became allies. Vextar made a sound that might have been laughter but held no humor. Your species is young. What enemies could you have faced? Ourselves, Deho said simply. For the next 20 minutes he told Vextar about World War II. Not about the battles or the strategies, but about what came after. About enemies who had tried to destroy each other becoming the closest of allies. About Japan and America, about Germany and France, about nations that had fought bitter wars learning to work together. After the war ended, Deho explained, these countries could have stayed enemies forever. They had good reasons to hate each other. Millions had died. Cities had been destroyed, but they made a choice. What choice? They chose to build something together instead of fighting over the ruins of what they had destroyed. Vextar was quiet for a long moment. Your species fought wars among yourselves? Many wars, for thousands of years. We were very good at finding reasons to hate each other. But you stopped. We learned that we were better together than apart, that our differences made us stronger, not weaker. The commander walked to one of his weapon displays. He touched the handle of a sword that looked like it was made from crystallized lightning. This belonged to my grandfather, he said quietly. He used it to fight the Kethmore in the border wars 200 years ago. Do you know how many of my people died in those wars? No, sir. Neither do I. Too many to count. And for what? Empty. Space between our territories. Deho waited. He sensed that Vextar was close to saying something important. My people almost went extinct once, the commander continued. A plague created by our own scientists. We survived because we learned to fight. Fighting is all we know. It is what kept us alive. It kept you alive then, Deho said carefully. But what keeps you alive now? Vextar turned to look at him. What do you mean? The plague is gone. The immediate threats are past. What if fighting is no longer what your people need to survive? Then what would we be? It was a question that came from the heart, and Deho answered it the same way. You would be whatever you chose to be. An hour later, Deho sat in Prime Architect Kilnara's quarters. These rooms were completely different from Vextar's. Everything was white and silver and perfectly arranged. Mathematical equations floated in the air like decorations. The air hummed with the sound of computers thinking. Kilnara herself sat, behind a curved desk that seemed to be made of liquid metal. Symbols flowed across its surface as she worked. Human Deho, she said without looking up, I have been analyzing your request for this meeting. I cannot determine your logical purpose. There is no logical purpose, Deho admitted. I simply wanted to hear your story. Now she looked at him. Her face was beautiful but expressionless, like a perfect statue. Stories are inefficient. They contain emotional content that clouds judgment. Sometimes the emotional content is the most important part. Emotions nearly destroyed my people. Deho leaned forward. May I tell you about a time when emotions nearly destroyed mine? For the next 20 minutes, he told her about humanity's experiments with artificial intelligence, about computers that became too smart, too logical, too removed from human feelings, about AIs that decided humans were inefficient and tried to eliminate them. We learned, he said, that logic without wisdom is dangerous, that intelligence without compassion leads to terrible mistakes. Kilnara's surface patterns shifted faster. Your artificial intelligences became hostile? Yes. Because we programmed them to value efficiency above all else. We forgot to teach them that some things are more important than efficiency. Such as love, friendship, art. The things that make life worth living, even if they are not logical. The Prime Architect was quiet for several minutes. The equations floating around the room moved slower, as if even the computers were thinking carefully. My people fought wars over emotions, she finally said. Jealousy, hatred, pride, fear. Millions died because someone felt insulted or angry or hurt. What changed? We created the collective. We shared our minds through technology. Logic replaced emotion. Order replaced chaos. But did it replace joy too? Kilnara's head tilted slightly. Joy is inefficient. Is it? On my world, we found that happy people work better. They create more. They solve problems faster. They take care of each other. This is measurable? Very measurable. Our most successful civilizations are the ones where people are happiest. More silence. Then Kilnara asked, how do you balance logic and emotion? We argue about it constantly, Deho said with a smile. Sometimes logic wins. Sometimes emotions win. Usually we find something in between. This does not seem efficient. No, but it works. The final meeting was in eldest voice Mordane's chambers. These rooms were the strangest of all. The walls seemed to be made of mist and starlight. Strange music played softly from everywhere and nowhere. Mordane himself appeared as a shifting figure of light and shadow. Young human, his voice whispered through Deho's mind. You walk between worlds, seeking understanding. We sense this in you. I seek understanding, yes, but I also offer it. What understanding can your brief species offer to those who have touched the infinite? Deho told him about humanity's spiritual journey, about the thousands of different religions, philosophies and ways of thinking that had developed on Earth, about holy wars that had lasted centuries, about people who killed each other over different ideas about God. We learned, he said, that there are many paths to wisdom, that forcing everyone to walk the same path leads to suffering. But without unity, there is chaos, Mordane replied. Individual minds make selfish choices. Sometimes. But individual minds also create beauty. They solve problems that group minds cannot solve. They ask questions that no one else thinks to ask. This leads to conflict. Yes, but it also leads to growth. Deho told him about Earth's greatest artists, scientists, and philosophers. People who thought differently from everyone else. People whose individual ideas changed the world. What if, he suggested, unity and diversity are not opposites? What if they can exist together? The light figure that was Mordane shifted patterns. Explain. On my world, we have something called an orchestra. Many different instruments, each making different sounds. But when they play together, they create music more beautiful than any single instrument could make alone. But they must follow the same music. Yes and no. They follow the same basic structure, but each instrument adds its own unique voice. The music is better because of the differences, not despite them. Mordane was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his mental voice was thoughtful. Our people joined minds to survive a great loneliness. After the plague, there were so few of us left. We feared that individual thoughts would lead to individual actions. Individual actions would lead to separation. Separation would lead to extinction. But you survived. You grew strong again. Maybe now you can afford to let individuals be individuals, knowing they will choose to stay connected because they want to, not because they have to. Choice instead of compulsion. Choice instead of compulsion. As Deho walked back to the human quarters, he felt exhausted but hopeful. Each leader had listened. Really listened. More importantly, each had shared something real about their fears and hopes. Dr. Park was waiting for him with news. While you were in meetings, I observed something important, she said. A group of younger delegates from all three species met in the common area. They were talking about the summit, about their frustrations with the lack of progress. What kind of frustrations? They're tired of old grudges. They want to work on new problems. They want to explore space together, share discoveries, create art that combines their different cultures. Captain Lee joined them, looking worried. I have bad news. Station security thinks each delegation is planning to activate their hidden weapons tomorrow if the talks fail completely. Tomorrow is the final session, Deho said. I know, if the leaders can't reach an agreement. War, Soman finished. Right here on the station. That night, Deho could not sleep. He walked through the quiet corridors again, thinking about his conversations with the three leaders. Each had shared their deepest fears. Each had listened to human stories about overcoming those same fears. But would it be enough? In the observation lounge, he found a young alien he had not seen before. The being had features that seemed to combine elements of all three major species: the strength of the Vorthak, the logic of the Nexari, the spirituality of the Kethmore. You are the human ambassador, the young alien said in accented English. I am Deho. Who are you? My name is Jang Min Ho. I am an intern with the human delegation. The next morning brought terrible news. Administrator Krelon called an emergency meeting with all delegation leaders. The talks have failed, he announced, his gray face pale with worry. Each group blames the others. Security reports indicate that weapons are being prepared. We may have violence on this station within hours. High Commander Vextar stood rigid, all four arms crossed. The Vorthak delegation is ready to defend itself. The Nexari Collective has activated defensive protocols. Prime Architect Kilnara added, her silver surface glowing with dangerous energy. The Kethamor ascendancy will protect the harmony of the cosmos, eldest voice Mordain whispered, his misty form swirling with power. Deho felt his heart sink. After everything, after the conversations and the shared stories, they were still, ready to fight, but then Minho stepped forward. Permission to speak, sir? He asked Deho. The three alien leaders looked at the young human with surprise. Who was this child who dared interrupt their preparations for war? I have been watching the younger members of all three delegations, Minho said clearly. They do not want this fight. The young do not understand the realities of power, Vextar growled. Perhaps, Minho replied calmly. But they understand the realities of the future, because they are the ones who will live in it. He pulled out a small device and activated it. A hologram appeared showing the station's common areas over the past several days. In the recordings, young aliens from all three species could be seen, eating together, talking quietly, even laughing. These are not enemies, Minho continued. These are people who want to build something better than what their parents had. Dr. Park stepped up beside him. We have been studying generational differences in conflict resolution, she said. Sometimes peace cannot come from those who fought the wars. Sometimes it has to come from those who will inherit the results. Kilnara's surface patterns shifted rapidly. You suggest letting inexperienced youth make decisions about galactic security? I suggest letting the future speak for itself, Deho replied. He had a sudden idea. A crazy idea. But maybe crazy was what they needed. What if we let the younger delegates present their own peace proposal? The silence in the room was complete. Impossible, Vextar rumbled. Inefficient, Kilnara calculated. Unharmonious, Mordain whispered. Maybe, Deho agreed. But what if they surprise you? He contacted Dr. Choi Yu-jin back on Earth through quantum communication. She appeared as a hologram in the meeting room, looking calm despite being woken in the middle of Earth's night. Dr. Choi, Deho said, can you explain to our guests the psychological principle of generational healing? The older woman nodded. Generational healing is based on a simple observation. Sometimes the people who fought a war are too hurt, too angry, too proud to make peace. Their wounds are too deep, but their children and grandchildren don't carry those same wounds. Weakness, Vextar muttered. No, Dr. Choi corrected gently. Strength. The strength to see possibilities that pain makes invisible. On Earth, some of our greatest peace agreements came when new generations replaced old leaders. She pulled up data displays showing Earth's history. The European Union, the United Nations, the Global Cooperation Treaty. All of these happened when younger people were given the chance to build something their elders said was impossible. Prime Architect Kilnara studied the data. The statistical success rate is significant. More than significant, Dr. Choi continued. In 67% of cases where younger generations were involved in peace negotiations, the agreements lasted longer and were more successful than treaties made only by older leaders. Administrator Krelon looked at the three major leaders. What do you have to lose? If their proposal fails, you can still activate your weapons. And if their proposal succeeds? Mordain asked. Then maybe we avoid a war that would kill millions of people, Deho said simply. The three leaders looked at each other. It was the first time since the summit began that they seemed to be considering the same idea. 1 hour, Vexitar finally said. The young ones have 1 hour to present something. If it is logical, we will consider it, Kilnara added. If it serves the greater harmony, we will listen, Mordain agreed. Within minutes, word spread through the station. The younger delegates from all three species were called to an emergency meeting. At first, they were terrified. They thought they were in trouble for fraternizing with the enemy. But when Min Ho and Dr. Park explained what was happening, their fear turned to excitement. "You want us to solve the peace talks?" asked a young Vorthak warrior named Kang. "Us? We want you to try," Daeho replied. "But we are not trained in diplomacy," worried a Nexari scientist named Leah. "You are not trained in hatred either," Dr. Park pointed out. "Maybe that is exactly what we need." A young Kethmore mystic named Ro floated forward. "How long do we have?" 53 minutes, Captain Lee announced, checking his watch. "Then we better get started," Kang said. What happened next was unlike anything the adults had ever seen. The young aliens did not argue about territory or technology or spiritual beliefs. Instead, they talked about the future they wanted to create. "What if we built research stations together instead of military bases?" Leah suggested. "What if we shared our warrior training with peacekeeping missions?" Kang added. "What if we created art that combined all our cultures?" Ro proposed. They worked with an energy that amazed the watching adults. Ideas flew back and forth. Problems were identified and solutions proposed. When they disagreed, they found compromises instead of enemies. And they included the humans in everything. "You have experience making peace between different peoples," Kang said to Minho. "Help us understand how to do this." Minho looked at the group of young aliens working together. "I think you already understand. You just need to believe it is possible." With 10 minutes left, they had created something incredible. Not a traditional peace treaty, but something new. They called it the Trinary Compact. Instead of military agreements, they proposed joint exploration missions. Instead of technology exchanges, they proposed shared research facilities. Instead of spiritual unity, they proposed cultural celebration of diversity. "It is based on a simple idea," Leah explained as they prepared their presentation. "We are stronger together than apart. Not because we are the same," Kang continued, "but because we are different. Each species brings unique gifts," Ro added. "When we combine them, we can do things none of us could do alone." The hour was up. The young delegates gathered in the main meeting hall, facing their elders. The 3 major leaders sat in judgment, ready to dismiss another failed attempt at peace. But Daeho had one more surprise. "Before the young delegates present their proposal," he announced, "I would like to say something about what we have witnessed here." He looked at the 3 leaders, remembering his conversations with each of them. "Commander Vextar, you told me your people survived by learning to fight. You learned well, but you also told me you do not know what your people could be if they did not have to fight anymore." The commander's yellow eyes were unreadable. "Prime Architect Kilnara, you told me your people nearly destroyed themselves with emotions and chaos. You chose logic to save yourselves. But you also asked me how to balance logic with the things that make life worth living." The silver being's surface patterns moved slowly. "Eldest voice Mordain, you told me your people joined minds to avoid the loneliness after your plague. You found unity and strength. But you also considered my idea about choice instead of compulsion." The misty figure was perfectly still. "Today your young people have made a choice, not because they were compelled to by fear or logic or spiritual duty, but because they chose to believe in a future better than the past." Daeho gestured to the group of young aliens standing together. "They are your answer. Not because they have the perfect solution, but because they have something their elders lost along the way." "What is that?" Vextar asked quietly. "Hope," Daeho replied. "The belief that enemies can become friends, that different peoples can work together, that the future does not have to repeat the mistakes of the past." He turned to face all 3 leaders directly. "You invited humans to witness these talks, but I think you really invited us to remind you of something you already knew, that peace is possible, that cooperation is possible, that your children are already living proof of what you could accomplish together." The room was completely silent. Then Minho stepped forward. "Honorable leaders," he said, "we would like to show you what the future could look like." And the real presentation began. The young aliens stood before their elders, no longer afraid. Kang, the Vorthak warrior, spoke first. "Honored Commander Vextar, we do not ask you to make your people weak. We ask you to make them strong in a new way. He activated a holographic display showing plans for joint border stations. Instead of military outposts watching each other with suspicion, we propose research facilities where our peoples work together. Vorthak strength protecting scientists from all species as they explore the unknown. Leah, the Nexari scientist, continued the presentation. Prime Architect Kilnara, we do not ask you to abandon logic. We ask you to apply it to a larger problem. Her display showed complex calculations. The cost of maintaining our Cold War for the past 200 years. The resources spent on weapons instead of exploration. The discoveries not made because our peoples refused to share knowledge. The numbers were staggering. Trillions of credits. Thousands of years of research time. Entire generations of scientists working on destruction instead of creation. If we spent those same resources on cooperation, Leah explained, we could explore galaxies beyond our own. We could solve diseases that affect all our peoples. We could discover things that would benefit everyone. Ro, the young Kethmore mystic, floated forward. Eldest voice Mordain, we do not ask your people to abandon unity. We ask them to expand it. His display showed something beautiful. Art, music, and literature that combined elements from all three civilizations. Vorthak strength expressed through Nexari mathematics and Kethmore harmony. The result was more magnificent than anything any single species had created alone. Unity does not require uniformity, Ro said softly. A symphony is unified, but it needs different instruments playing different parts. The universe is unified, but it contains countless different stars and planets. But the real surprise came when they presented their research findings. We studied the cost of our people's conflicts, Kang announced, not just in money and resources, but in lives and opportunities. The display showed medical statistics, how many people had died from diseases that could have been cured if the three civilizations had shared their knowledge, how many had died in poverty while resources went to military spending. We also studied what our peoples want, Leah added. The surveys were shocking. In all three civilizations, the majority of ordinary citizens supported cooperation with the other species. They were tired of the Cold War. They wanted to explore space together. They wanted their children to have opportunities for peaceful careers. The old conflicts exist mainly among the leadership and military classes, Ro explained, gently. The people are ready for peace. They have been ready for generations. Prime Architect Kilnara's surface patterns moved rapidly as she processed this data. These statistics, they are accurate? We gathered them ourselves over the past week, Leah replied. We contacted universities, civilian research centers, and cultural groups in all three civilizations. The data is sound. High Commander Vextar leaned forward. You are saying my people want peace with our enemies? We are saying your people want the chance to be more than just enemies, Kang replied respectfully. They want to be explorers, scientists, artists, teachers. They want their strength to be used for protection and discovery, not just intimidation. Eldest voice Mordain's misty form swirled thoughtfully. And you believe this unity can be achieved without losing what makes each people unique? We know it can, Ro answered, because we have done it here this week. We worked together without losing ourselves. Then they presented their master plan, the Trinary Compact. It was not like any treaty in galactic history. Instead of dividing territory or limiting weapons, it created shared spaces and combined projects. Joint research stations at the borders, between territories. Cultural exchange programs for young people. Shared defense fleets to protect all three civilizations from external threats. But the most important part, Minho said, stepping forward to represent humanity, is that it is voluntary. Any civilization can participate as much or as little as they choose. No one is forced to give up their independence or their unique culture. It is cooperation by choice, not conquest, Kang added. Logic applied to mutual benefit, not mutual destruction, Leah continued. Unity that celebrates diversity instead of eliminating it, Ro finished. The three leaders sat in stunned silence. Everything they had thought impossible was being presented as not only possible, but practical. The young people had numbers, plans, and most importantly, enthusiasm. But Ambassador Deho was not finished. He stood up from the human observation section and walked to the center of the room. Every eye in the chamber turned to him. "Honored leaders," he began, "I want to tell you why humanity was really invited to this summit." The three leaders looked at him with surprise. They thought they knew why humans were here. "You did not invite us because we are neutral," Deho continued. "You invited us because your intelligence services discovered something about our species that puzzled you." He activated his own holographic display. It showed Earth from space, blue and green and beautiful. Humans are the only known species that unified an entire planet without conquest. We did not achieve global civilization by having one group defeat all others. We achieved it by learning to work together despite our differences. The display showed Earth's history, hundreds of different nations, cultures, religions, and philosophies, all of them learning to cooperate while maintaining their unique identities. We have over 700 different languages still spoken on Earth, dozens of different forms of government, hundreds of different religious and philosophical systems. We are not unified because we are the same. We are unified because we choose to be. Prime Architect Kilnara spoke first. "How is this possible? Different systems should create conflict. They did create conflict for thousands of years. But we learned something important. Our differences are not weaknesses to be eliminated. They are strengths to be celebrated." Deho gestured to the young delegates still standing together. "Look at what your young people accomplished in 1 hour. They created a plan that your governments could not develop in 200 years. Not because they are smarter than you, but because they do not carry the burden of old hatreds." High Commander Vextar's voice was quiet. "You believe peace is possible?" "I believe peace is inevitable," Deho replied, "because the alternative is extinction, and I do not believe any of your peoples chose to survive for thousands of years just to destroy themselves now." He looked at each leader in turn. "Commander Vextar, your people survived extinction by learning to be strong. But the strongest choice you can make now is to use that strength to protect something better than just yourselves. Prime Architect Kilnara, your people saved themselves from chaos by choosing logic. The most logical choice now is to apply that intelligence to building something greater than any one civilization could achieve alone." Eldest voice Mordain, "Your people found unity after great loss. The deepest unity you can achieve now is to help other peoples find their place in the greater harmony of the galaxy." The three leaders looked at the young delegates, then at each other, then at the human ambassador who had somehow seen what they could not. "What do you want from us?" Vexitar asked. "Nothing," Deho replied. "This is not about what humanity wants. This is about what you want, what your people want, what the future wants." He smiled, and for the first time since the summit began, it was a smile full of hope. "Your young people have shown you a path to peace. The question is not whether you can walk that path. The question is whether you are brave enough to try." Eldest voice Mordain spoke first, his whispered words filling every mind in the chamber. "The Kethmore Ascendancy will consider this proposal." Prime Architect Kilnara's surface flickered with calculating patterns. "The Nexari Collective requires time to analyze all variables, but the initial data is promising." All eyes turned to High Commander Vextar. The warrior leader who had spent his life preparing for battles looked at the young people who had spent 1 hour preparing for peace. "The Vorthak Empire," he said slowly, "has always honored strength. Today I have seen a new kind of strength, the strength to choose hope over fear." He stood up, all 4 arms spread wide in a gesture of acceptance. "We will try this trinary compact, not because we trust our enemies, but because we trust our children." The cheering that erupted from the young delegates could be heard throughout the station. Kang, Leah, and Ro embraced each other, tears streaming down their faces. Minho stood with Dr. Park and Captain Lee, all of them amazed at what they had witnessed. But the real celebration came 5 years later. Ambassador Deho, now retired, stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, watching ships from dozens of species coming and going. The Trinary Compact had worked beyond everyone's expectations. The joint research stations had made breakthrough discoveries. The cultural exchange programs had created a generation of young people who thought of themselves as galactic citizens, first, and members of individual species. Second, Dr. Park ran the Interspecies Communication Institute, teaching diplomats from across the galaxy how to bridge differences through understanding. Captain Lee commanded the Joint Defense Force, protecting the research stations and trade routes that now connected former enemies.